so that when I am out and about walking the streets, you can still reach out and touch me or raise any issues or concerns, regardless of whether we're in the office or out of the office, particularly if there's something that the council wants to bring to our attention immediately. We would be able to do so more effectively than having to wait until we go back and then see if there are messages. Also held a meet and greet. Thanks to the mayor for showing up there over at Unique Gifts, and that was for me, embarrassingly enough. And that went well in spite of the snow, which came down about partway through. And also this last month, I met with David Rice, our new director over at Georgetown Scott County Museum, and he and I have begun discussing ways that we can partner more effectively with them to help promote them and to include them in downtown events so that they'll get more visibility. Are there any questions or comments from the council?
David, I do have a question. The two things that stand out, and thank you for this pie chart, but the two things that stand out with me is that over half of everyone who attended was local, and that
now keep in mind, these are just the people we talked to.
Right, okay. But then the information source is word of mouth. Is there a plan to maybe try to expand that next year to bring in more people from out of town, or? That's something that we would be discussing with Festival of Horse when we go to talk to them on the 19th, and that would be part of our proposal to help them with that visibility. Keep in mind, we were limited while conducting the survey. We can't just walk up and say, are you local or out of town, and then just walk away from the locals. Sure.
But that was mainly included so that you do know where we got the information from.
Okay.
Did you have a follow-up point?
No.
How many people did you ask?
130 that we actually got completed surveys by. We do still have some out on East Main, but went ahead and had to do a cutoff so that I could give the presentation to the council in a timely manner.
Thank you, David. Ms. Eads? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This has nothing to do with any person because I do not personally know the present city clerk. Maybe I can help all of the council that have tried so hard to make the right decision, plus represent the citizens that share my opinion. And I've talked to several people. Some people have trouble taking care of their own finances and more trouble taking care of other person's money. The taxpayers' money should be well managed. If the present clerk was an employee of your private business, would you give the following increases? The clerk recently received a raise of 3%, which translates into about 50 to 60 cents increase on the hour, plus addition paid in retirement and Social Security. This is a pretty substantial raise compared to raises given in private sector. The federal government figured COLA at 1.5. I do not know who figured the 3% for citizens to pay that are getting the 1.5. So the 1.5% are paying the 3%. The 3% amount would have been a good amount towards the police station, which the mayor stated was top priority, which I agree with. If this position becomes appointed, the responsibilities are changed greatly. The mayor then becomes responsible for the office. If the pay is increased to $1,200 weekly, how does this apply to the other clerks that are doing the same work? You cannot compare population with other cities to figure the pay. Different clerks have different responsibilities. The city clerk here used to pay all the city bills and do payroll. How many liquor licenses have we sold in Georgetown? And how often is taxes paid on liquor? This I do not know. If it's 1,000, 300, 100, I don't know how tremendous the job is, but you all probably know. If the clerk is now working at any time for the mayor or in any another capacity, that is not her job. All employees have had increases in workload due to growth of Georgetown. Citizens also share in this by paying more taxes. Single moms, single dads, the unemployed, seniors, all pay franchise, insurance tax, payroll tax, and so forth. The police and public works and the fire department probably have had the most additional work. If it becomes an appointed position, will it be advertised and the present clerk need to apply? Some other citizen might be interested in a salary of $1,200 weekly, plus benefits, health, and retirement benefits. City employees do not work for the city of Georgetown. They are paid by the citizens and work for the citizens of Georgetown. We have young men dying overseas for democracy, for the right to vote. It doesn't seem right for a few people to take away the right of the people to vote here when we're fighting overseas for people to do it over there. Democracy is on the people, is of the people. The vote of the people, that's of the people, by the people, people elected from the population, for the people, people elected to represent the people, for the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. I think the population, citizens, have the ability to elect a qualified clerk, and if someone is not interested in an elected position, they should apply for a different position with the city. Thank you.
Ma'am. Okay, next on item, mayor's comments. And we have a proclamation for the Extra Mile Week. Tracy, you have that?
City of Georgetown Proclamation, Extra Mile Day. Whereas Georgetown, Kentucky is a community where as individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Georgetown, Kentucky is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Georgetown, Kentucky is a community which chooses to support and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Georgetown, Kentucky acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 400 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2013. Now therefore, I, Everett Varney, Mayor of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2013 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, world a better place.
I think we do an outstanding job in the city of Georgetown of going the extra mile. I've always said that without the volunteers that we have in this city, we can't get the job done. And we're very pleased to make that proclamation. Okay, Ms. Pursley, Ms. Jimmy, welcome. Amen House.
Thank you for allowing me to come. I'd like to give you this, please.
Thank you.
Since I had not been to the city council for quite some time, I thought it was time that I came, since we have a lot of new members. And what you have before you is last fiscal year's service record, the number of families that we served in the fiscal year which ended in June. And on the reverse side, you have what we've done this year. And I've added October in there. And as you see, October's not finished yet. Last fiscal year, we served 4,319 families in Scott County for the year. And we didn't count that. I don't count the people. That's just families, and families can range from any size. And so far this year, this fiscal year, there's only been 4 months. And this month is not over yet. And we've already served 1,575 families. This is just the first quarter in this fiscal year. And we have in Scott County quite a few homeless. If you're unaware of that, you don't see them all the time, but they are there. There are families who are living 3 and 4 families in a household. And some people are under the impression that the families that we serve don't work. But we're serving many families. Most of our families work every day, but they do not make enough money to take care of their families. They work in service areas. If you're working in a restaurant and serving all of us when we go to the restaurant, do you know how much they make? $2.65 an hour is base pay. And they count their tips as additional pay. If they work at night, they don't get tips, or if they got somebody in their service area who don't give tips, they don't make anything. I've seen people come with $20 for 2 weeks' work because they've not worked where they've gotten tips, or they've been sent home because they didn't have any customers. So people, and the other people who are not working, we've got seniors and retirees who own fixed incomes. And I know in this city, we've still got seniors that we don't serve who need to be served. So I come before this council asking your support, and if you could put us in your budget to help take care of the members of Scott County. Everybody does a lot of things, because if it was not for the members in Scott County, we would not be there. Everything we get comes from somebody in Scott County, or we do get some from the county and from United Way. Our dollar budget is about $150,000 a year. And if I counted what people give as far as food and clothing and all the other personal items, our budget probably runs somewhere $250,000 to $300,000 a year. And we still don't take care of the families that need it. We work at trying to keep people in their homes, trying to keep their utilities on, sending them to doctor's offices, and we get lots of transients through this county. Since we sit right between I-64 and I-75, we get lots of people who come in here, their cars break down or they run out of resources or what have you. And we get lots of people who come to Scott County looking for work. They take up everything they have, wherever they come from. They come to Scott County, think there's some magic job. But they stay here, they stay on the street, and we end up sending them back to their state or their county. I send people all over the United States to try to get them out of Scott County because they've been here. We're keeping them in hotels, we're feeding them. And if they have some place that will house them where they came from, we work at sending them back. And if they agree to do that, so we send them back to their home states or to their home counties. So there's a lot of resources in Scott County, and also there's a lot of need. And I'd just like to bring before you that there is plenty of need, and we would like your support if you could find the dollar to put us in your budget. Are there any questions?
I've always said that as progressive and as well off as Scott County is, we still have so many people in need. We have our share of the homeless also.
Absolutely, absolutely. They stay in the park. You don't see those people that stay in the park at night, especially in the summer. In the wintertime, I see more of them because it's too cold, or when they get tired of staying in the park and need a bath, then they want a hotel room or something of that nature. And sometimes those are families with children, not always individuals. Have many people driving with children. They go to school every day, And the school doesn't always know that they don't have a place to live. Because if they find out the family doesn't have a place to live, they're going to be trying to take their children. Because they've got to have places for them to live.
Ms. Persley, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Maybe make a comment first. Appreciate everything you do, and I know you do a great deal, and I can tell you many of those sitting up here, they give through their churches, and I know the churches are very involved with the organization. And anyway, I wanted to mention that to you.
Yes.
I also wanted to mention to you that we're going to have a budget process, and that's probably the time that we need to take a look at requests like this.
Right. That's why I came. So when you
And,
thought about it, I would hope you'd think about us.
And then the next question, I guess, you say a lot of people come to Georgetown. Do they hear about how good Georgetown is? And
They
the
come
economy
looking
in
for work.
Georgetown?
They think there's lots of jobs with Toyotas here,
Right.
and there's nothing in their home counties or nothing in their home states, so they end up here.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not qualified, they're uneducated, and there's just nothing.
Yeah.
They come, somebody's promised them something, they get here, and that's not there.
Yeah.
So, and some they just pick up their whole families
Sure.
and head this way hoping. Some of them come just hoping.
On the families, I mean, I guess the number of families applying, that's just the families per month that are applying. So it's basically
That's
you got
right.
346 active clients back in June.
I'm sorry.
So you like have 346 families you're supporting actively in June, and that might be some of the same families that you supported in May. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
yes.
Understand.
This is not an unduplicated count.
Okay. Yeah. That's what
Because they're allowed to come once every 30 days for food. And they can only come once every 4 months for financial assistance. And financial assistance being rent payments or electric bills or gas bills, water bills, those kinds of things. And on top of that, we do prescriptions. We've got many people who can't get their medicines. We do, as I said before, bus tickets, sending people back. We do gas vouchers for people that are traveling through and don't have money to get on where they're going, to send them, to continue them on their journey, and things of that nature. And without the support of, we know all of the churches, there is about 100 churches now in Scott County,
Yeah.
and we get about 35 of those continual support, which I think is really good. We'd like to have more, and we're working at doing that. And then we get the United Money Way, and we get private citizens, private individuals in Scott County are wonderful, but we need more. If I had $1 million, I could spend it. Other
Now
questions?
win the lottery, I'll see you get $1 million too.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you, Jimmy,
questions?
and thank you for what you do. You're a very special person.
Thank you.
Okay, next franchise agreements. We're happy to have with us tonight Ms. Linda Ain, and she's going to enlighten us. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah,
and
folks, I'd
introduce her.
like to introduce Miss Linda Ain. There are many people in Kentucky, myself included, that consider Linda to be Kentucky's leading expert on municipal franchises. Some time ago, actually, when I first came here, we started looking at the state of the city's franchise agreements, electric, gas, water, garbage, and I noticed there was a sort of a lot that could be fixed and updated, so I enlisted Linda's help, and she's here to talk to us tonight about some of the things that we've discussed and to help answer any of the council's questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Linda.
Well, thank you for inviting me tonight. I want to give you all just a really quick overview of the franchising law in Kentucky, and that'll give you a basis of what the city can do in the future. Basically, the Kentucky Constitution, Section 163 and 164, that controls franchising in Kentucky. Section 163 says basically any public utility that uses the rights of way has to get a franchise from the city. And then there's case law that says not only the public utilities, that would be water, gas, electric, But there's case law that says that a cable television needs a franchise, and that garbage collection, if it's not municipally run, needs a franchise. And then 164 says all franchises in Kentucky need to be bid out and advertised, and they can be for no longer than 20 years. So you can have a franchise that's shorter than 20 years, but it can't be longer than 20 years. And I have taken a look at the franchises that Georgetown currently has. You currently have a cable franchise, which I helped you all with a while back. That, as you all know, you're members of the Kentucky Regional Cable Commission, and that franchise is due to expire in June of 2014, and that negotiations will be the Kentucky Regional Cable Commission is gearing up for those negotiations. So that's pretty much settled. You also have an electric franchise with Kentucky Utilities. That's due to expire in several years, and I believe you're getting 3% franchise fees on that. So you're set for that. When that comes up for renegotiation, I think there's some issues that you should address. But for right now, you have a franchise with Kentucky Utilities. That would leave water. You have municipal water, I believe, and so you're good there. Municipalities do not have to have franchises to run over their own land. You also have natural gas here with Columbia Gas. Currently, I don't believe that you have a gas franchise. Andrew asked me to look into the possibilities for revenue, what you're looking at for revenue if you were to have a gas franchise. Basically, Kentucky law requires that any utility that uses your rights-of-way have a franchise. So it would be my opinion that the city of Georgetown should acquire a gas franchise, put one out for bid, and that Columbia Gas would and should bid on it. The question is what that gas franchise should look like. And gas franchises in Kentucky look very different from community to community. I did a survey for the city of Owensboro several years ago, and what I found out is that there are some communities who get 1%, some communities get 2%, some communities get 3%. Many of the communities in central Kentucky get 3%. I believe that there are communities also in central Kentucky where they have escalation clauses where they are currently at 3% but can go to 5%. So that's what you're looking at with regard to revenue. Now the question is, how many gas users do you have in the city of Georgetown? And I talked to Columbia Gas, and they said they have approximately 5,000 customers in the city of Georgetown. And that if you were to, their total revenues were approximately $3.7 million for the last fiscal year, and that a 3% franchise fee would yield about $111,000. This is all approximate numbers. But that's the kind of revenue that you're looking at for a gas franchise. There are several communities that I've talked to about gas franchises, and the city leaders are concerned about putting a new franchise on bills, but a lot of communities feel like this is an equity issue, that the citizens in your community that have electric heat are currently paying 3% to the city through their Kentucky Utilities bill. And so that it becomes an equity issue for those folks that have gas. That's how some communities look at it. So that is a kind of a summary of what a gas franchise would look like. It would also have performance bonds, letters of credit, insurance requirements, things of that nature, things that typically you have in your Kentucky Utilities franchise and your cable franchises right now. With regard to garbage franchise, as I believe the city of Georgetown currently hauls its own residential garbage, and that you have commercial garbage collection is done by private haulers. Currently, you have a municipal ordinance, I believe it's section 19-17, paren 1 of the City of Georgetown Code, and that basically provides that the city may proceed with waste pickup and disposal by franchise. So that combined with the state law saying, the case law that says, if there's going to be private garbage collection, there should be a franchise. I would recommend that you put a franchise in place. I believe that currently your the solid waste collection for commercial, those providers are currently paying to the city a fee of 10% of their gross revenues. So that's already in place. It wouldn't be a new fee. The providers would, but basically, instead of just paying a license fee, we would set up a franchising process. And what I've done is looked all over the state to see what other communities were doing. There was a model, I guess the best model that we used was from Henderson County, but with pulling things from the city of Elizabeth, and there are lots of other models from cities and counties around the state. And I have a draft, which I believe Andrew circulated to you all.
Everybody should got it.
And basically what it does is it creates a franchise for something you are already doing. So you're already collecting these license fees from the providers. They are non-exclusive. So you are not saying to any of the haulers, you cannot come into our community. We want commercial businesses to be able to choose who they have for their commercial solid waste haulers. And so this is a draft. Andrew and I, put this together, but it's just something for you all to consider.
One of the things that I noticed about our garbage franchise is there's not a whole lot of requirements. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but for instance, there's really no requirement that anybody register or agree to be part of the franchise process. We just take companies' words that they're actually collecting garbage and that they're remitting the fee and that the amount of what they're remitting is correct. We have no way of checking it. There are sort of no safeguards, and we also the process that's in our ordinance, it technically isn't, in my opinion, complying with the bidding requirement. Now there's some flexibility in what that requires. When you have a non-exclusive franchise, I think the idea is, and Linda will correct me if I'm wrong, but you would essentially go out for bid, and anybody, if it's going to be a non-exclusive franchise, anybody has the right to become a part of that agreement and to bid on that franchise. And essentially what they're doing is they're agreeing by the terms in the franchise agreement and also to abide by the franchise ordinance. And I apologize, I thought that we had that in the packet. Megan is going to make some copies, but basically it has what Linda was saying. It has requirements regarding insurance and gives us access to things like audits and financial statements if necessary. Requires them to notify us if they're going to be hauling garbage commercially, and like Linda said, it's not a new franchise. We already have that in place. It's a strengthening of what currently exists. Now there are other options, but we thought we would start with simply strengthening what we have. I mean, other communities that do franchises will go all private, or the ones that have municipal garbage collection, they don't have franchises at all. But for any private collection done, the Constitution and the case law contemplates that there is some kind of competitive process, and that's not currently.
Right, and that cities should be regulating those who use their rights of way. It all comes down to the rights of way.
Okay.
Sure.
Quick question. When you're talking about with the haulers, I mean, there's different ones that come into this community. That wouldn't change things, would it?
It would
Yeah.
not. They would. It wouldn't change things unless they refuse to be part of the franchise agreement.
And then they would be excluded from the community.
Right,
Okay.
and that would be part of the franchising. Would
Right.
be we would have the right to say to them, you don't have the authority to operate here unless you agree to these terms.
So what would the economic benefit be then? Would we receive more revenue because it would be better monitored?
I believe that is the idea, is that it would be fair to those who are paying by catching those who aren't.
And we think there's some that aren't.
I think so. Yeah, we have pretty good reason to believe that. Like we don't get filings from some folks, and we know we see them out there.
Okay.
And we've known that for some time,
Yeah,
haven't we?
sure.
And it would give you the ability to audit those folks that are paying.
You brought up a while ago that we own our own water company, that considers no franchise. But what about when Kentucky American Water runs through the property?
If they're using the rights of way, then they should have a franchise. So if Kentucky
I believe
American.
we do. We
Okay,
do.
that wasn't mentioned.
Just a
She
very-
didn't mention that a while
Right.
ago. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it is a very small number, but yes.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question back
Sure.
on the, I guess it would relate to Columbia Gas. They're the only provider in this community, is that right?
I believe so.
So
Best we can-
if something were implemented, or maybe I should say in other communities when it's implemented, does that change what they charge the customer? Because they've got to go to the Public Service Commission.
That's correct. Basically, they will be adding as a line item the franchise fee, just like Kentucky Utilities has a line
So it
item.
would directly impact the customers in this community.
That's
if it were
correct.
passed.
But
But now that's exactly the way it worked with the haulers as well. Because when the 10% was implemented with the haulers sent out a letter to all of their customers and said, here's your extra 10%. And that's why I assume that's, like you said, it's the way KU does it as well.
But again, it's as other communities have looked at it as an equity issue, because the folks that have Kentucky Utilities to heat their water and their homes are already paying that.
Can you talk a little bit about the, as far as gas franchise goes, how it differs between residential and industrial and commercial?
They have different rates for industrial and commercial, and so whatever the rates the industrial are paying, it will be less for it. They'll pay a percentage, but because they're at different rates, and if they are also some industrials get and if you want the folks from Columbia Gas to come in and explain this more fully, they'll be happy to do that. But your residential will see a straight 3%, and also the commercials will see 3%, and industrial will see 3%, but the rates are different because of the usage. So it is different, but I think if you want the representatives from Columbia Gas to explain that more fully, they'll be happy to do that.
Was there discussion on council when we implemented the electric franchise about gas and the other utilities? I'm just curious.
I think it was long ago, like almost like 15, 17 years ago. So I mean, we could go back and look, but
I'm just curious.
You're not the only, when I did this survey in 2011, what I found was there were lots of communities, especially in central Kentucky, for whatever reason, that did not have gas franchises. So there are several other communities in central Kentucky that do not have gas franchises. I think there are several communities that are working towards that now, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen.
Is that study something that you can forward us?
Oh, sure. Andrew, do you have a copy of that? Yeah,
Send that to you.
Andrew has that. So, and that was done. I have a list of maybe 900 city and county officials. I sent the request out, and probably 45 responded. And so you can see the folks that responded. And the franchise fees go from even the folks that have franchises are as low as 0. They just have a franchise, but with no franchise fees, all the way up to, I believe, Lexington's franchise currently allows them to go to 5%. They're currently at 3%, but they can go as high as 5%.
Is there a franchise agreement as far as the railroad? Is the railroad considered?
They're
private. It's private land, so it
Oh,
wouldn't
okay.
be a franchise.
Okay.
But there are, what do they call those? There are franchises in the sense that they are considered. Franchise has two different meanings, and they get a franchise tax from the state, but that is different from a municipal franchise.
So the
But-
municipalities do not regulate the railroads in Kentucky. If they're going across private land, or they would have other arrangements.
That's the key. That's the key behind a franchise. Is it's essentially, you know, that when Columbia Gas has to dig through a right of way, or when a garbage truck has to drive over a city street, over time that does damage to city infrastructure, and the idea of a franchise is to recoup that. It's constitutionally required that companies essentially bid on the right to use city rights of way. I mean, that's franchise in its basest definition. So,
What kind of revenue are we currently generating from the commercial haulers?
It's just a little over 100,000.
Linda, the only question that I can think of that I would want to ask while you're here with us is you mentioned the equity factor. From the other side of that, except for a couple of properties on Rucker, I think we pretty much use electric in every home and business. And what's the argument for those that are not using gas as their I mean, for those that I've lost my train of thought.
Well, I can tell
But-
you what Kentucky Utilities says. They said that they have approximately 4,700 residential customers in the city. That's how many, approximately 4,700 residential, 300 commercial, and 2 industrial.
And there's about 5,000 on the gas.
That's right. So 5,000, but of that, would be 4,700 are residential.
But who is our other electric company then? Because there's,
that's
Bluegrass Energy.
that's gas. That's gas. That's not electric.
This is so you have all homes. I believe all homes in Georgetown have electric. Everyone has electric.
I was lost, I was going to say.
So then there's some homes. All homes have electric. There are some homes that have gas.
Okay, there you go.
So that's where they're homes that
A little over half.
right. And so
So if I'm a gas customer, my here's I guess was my question. If I'm a gas customer, I don't.
you're gas and electric. You have both. You have electric for your lights and gas typically for your heat, your
Water heater.
water, and some people use it for cooking.
Right.
So, and then your newer homes are typically all electric.
Right.
That's what you're looking at. It's typically your newer construction tends to be mostly all
If I
electric.
use gas to heat my home, I feel left out and want to be taxed, so it's equitable with the all electric house. I don't. That's my question. But I don't. that's
Okay, but it would be the folks that have all electric houses are paying 3% for their heating, and the folks that have gas homes are not paying 3% on their
But
heating.
they're paying
And-
3% on their electric.
That they are paying 3% on their for their
Remember-
lights.
Remember too that you can look at it that way, but it's also the idea of a franchise is compensating for the use
Right.
of the city's right of ways.
And
So The gas lines have still got to go in the ground just as much as the poles have to go.
Absolutely. And that's the part where I'm trying to think of it from both sides, from the council perspective, the usage of the infrastructure and the franchise necessary for those rights of way and those usage factors, but from the citizens' perspective, and having lived in both an all-electric home and a gas-heated home, I can see what the citizens' question is from the other perspective, if that makes sense. And those two views are not the same at all.
On the franchise agreement, I think I now understand a little bit more. Franchise agreement, like on the private haulers, we can have more than one franchise.
It's non-exclusive, and basically, we would advertise for bids, and then if somebody comes to the city and say, we want to, me too, we could certainly advertise again. There's no limit on how many times we can advertise. So if you decide you want to advertise multiple times during the year, that would be fine.
So I guess in just the experience of other cities, would the trucks have like a sticker on them or be required to carry some verification of the franchise agreement?
We could set it up that way. That's a very good idea.
One of the revenue officers look at them. Okay.
What exactly is the competitive nature then, if you're allowing everyone in the process? How does that translate into creating a competitive atmosphere?
Well, it's that you have to comply with the requirements of the city, and it's more of a regulation of the rights of way, that you're using the city's rights of way. The city needs to control who is using their rights of way, and it's non-competitive. In fact, the city you have a non-competitive cable franchise currently, that under federal law, cable franchises have to be non-competitive. Now, you only have one cable operator in the city of Georgetown that I'm aware of, and that's Time Warner. But at any time, another cable operator could come to the city and get a franchise.
So in terms of the haulers, how is the franchising process different than the licensing fee that we have now?
It's not very different from them. There are a couple more requirements, but it's not drastically different.
But the way we write it gives us more teeth in terms of enforcement?
And it's required under state law.
Yeah. Basically, the way Henderson County is doing it is essentially the exact way we're doing it. They're just doing it a whole lot better. I mean, that's kind of the idea behind the ordinance is I guess we decided some time ago to make commercial hauling non-exclusive. We have the ability to do, and a lot of folks do, exclusive franchises. You go out to bid, and the top bidder, or even the top 1 or 2 or 3 bidders, and you can divide it up into pies and however you want to do it. Get the exclusive right. I don't know if the idea of a non-exclusive franchise has ever really been tested, but I can tell you it's done in a lot of places. The idea is you're satisfying your requirement under the Constitution to bid it out. Yes, it is a little bit of a legal fallacy. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it, I guess.
But it says the highest and best bidder. There could be 5 highest and best bidders. If they're all equal, then.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at. If you're
So I don't think it's a
you're going
fallacy.
to quote this thing out, and we want to do the best for our businesses and our commercial users, why would you not make that an exclusive bid?
You could. There are communities that do it that way, and there's certainly models that we can go back and redraft this if that's the council's desire to do that. Andrew and I just thought because you currently have many providers here and the commercial establishments are happy with whoever they're picking, that's fine. There are many communities in Kentucky that go with exclusive franchises. So that's a model. We can go back and redraft this if that's the council's desire. But your current practices are you have multiple providers, and Andrew and I thought that's what the city wanted to continue. If that's something that if you want to have an exclusive franchise, there are many models in Kentucky where cities have exclusive franchises.
And I think the reason that they do that is because it brings the best value, typically, to their users.
Right. A lot of the commercial, and when we looked at the exclusive franchises, a lot of those were for residential. because people are very concerned about the prices for residential, for your individual taxpayers, and that's not an issue here because you have municipal garbage collection. But when I looked at, for instance, the city of Florence, they, for residential garbage, they have an exclusive franchise, and they set the rate. I didn't know if that's the council's pleasure, we can look at doing something like that, but that's not your practice right now.
I guess in regards to setting an exclusive, and I don't know that we have, a small local hauler or not that services any part of the city in any capacity. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know. I know you have some regional haulers. I don't know if there's folks that are just local to Georgetown. I haven't seen the whole
The
list.
only one that might come into play would be the one down to landfill. They have some dumpsters and stuff, and that could fall in that way.
That's the only one, but they're, on a grand scale, they're a very small percentage of that.
I mean, I know other communities have, just small local guys that have certain routes, and they go and they take care of their customer base. And, I wouldn't want to put anybody out of business that was obviously dependent on this community to survive. So that's why I asked the question.
I don't think you'll find that here.
So what do we need to do, Andrew?
Well, since we have, first you got two issues. Let's put garbage over here, and we'll start with garbage. Since there's multiple ways you all could go about doing it. Now, I think it's my opinion that we have to do something, whether it's simply cleaning up and strengthening the existing, or if you all want to go to exclusive, and we sort of need that guidance. I don't know if it's the right time for you all to vote on something like that. We have a drafted ordinance we haven't got any readings planned or anything like that, but we have an ordinance drafted for cleaning up. If you all want us to go another route, let us know. I mean, otherwise, we could get a sponsor and bring this back. I'm not sure.
Can you bring us back something to look at if we were interested in looking at an exclusive franchise?
I mean, sure, we can bring
Maybe
you
some
we can
models
bring
from
you
other
some
cities.
models. I think the real key though there is not what would it look like,
But
but
who's going to bid on it?
who's going to bid on it? What's it going to mean for the other haulers, and how, when you say exclusive, are you meaning 100% exclusive, or are you going to take the top two? Those are the kinds of things that you would need to work out, but that's certainly something we could discuss.
Do you have a study that maybe you've done comparing that, of these other cities? Are they taking a single hauler? Are they taking two? Are they taking three?
I haven't done a study. If that's something the city of Georgetown wants to do, I'm happy to do that.
At least from my perspective, I'm not as comfortable with the exclusive just because I'm a little unsure about it, but I'm certainly comfortable cleaning this up and getting it in the legal format that you recommend or that you advise or the two of you suggest. At least that's coming from me,
Well,
obviously.
it's not fair that we're collecting from some and not collecting from others.
I agree with that,
It
too.
needs to be across the board as best as we can get it.
Do you want to know who's active in paying their franchise fees?
Please.
Yeah, we'll get you that info too,
I think it is.
Who's not?
I think yeah.
if we know.
I think in terms of looking at it from an exclusive franchise, it's problematic because the customers are choosing these carriers themselves. I mean, I think we do start to run also into an issue of convenience back to the customer. I mean, there's a reason why they're picking the haulers they're picking.
Right.
And I'd be reluctant to go to. Then those relationships are long-standing. A lot of the businesses, I'm sure, feel comfortable and also feel that that's part. That comfort helps them go from day to day. And I just am a little reluctant to disrupt those relationships to go to one exclusive private hauler.
Well, here's my thought then. We will get you all as much information as we can. We'll get you this and Linda's study and survey, and get the information you asked as far as exclusive, and then maybe we'll come back and we'll get a sponsor on this ordinance. If somebody wants to sponsor another ordinance, we'll look at that. And then as far as gas goes, it's my recommendation that we at least have a gas franchise. Linda said earlier, there's always the possibility there are some cities who don't have any kind of revenue. It's a legal requirement that you have it. I'm gonna, it's not my place to decide whether you all want to attach revenue to it or not, but it is my place to say we're legally required to do it.
Legally, we have to have a franchise agreement
That's
with,
right.
Columbia Gas, who's the only one that I know is in here.
So we'll do the same thing that we did with garbage, and we'll get you some examples of how it looks from other cities. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, that I think the gas companies, particularly Columbia Gas, are quite familiar with the process.
Yes, they're aware. I got this information from Columbia Gas. They're aware that the city is discussing it, and I think it's highly likely that they would provide me with language similar to what they have in place in Lexington.
I mean, it's essentially, the weird thing is, even though it's a bid, it's sort of essentially a negotiated process.
Yeah, I mean, typically in franchising in Kentucky is you negotiate agreements and then you put them out for bid.
Right. So we'll try to get you more information on that. But I guess
We'll get it out, we'll email it to you.
yeah, we'll
So
need
you have
guidance
plenty
from
of
the
time
council
to-
as to
look at it.
What do we currently get off the KU franchise, the electric franchise?
Around 500,000 a year.
Any other questions? Have Linda right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and if you all have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or pass your questions to Andrew, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Linda, thank you for being with us this evening. Appreciate it very
Oh,
much.
thank you.
Okay, moving down, first reading of an ordinance changing the election of a city clerk to an appointed position. I would like to go back a little bit on this before we have our first reading. I know I called for a special meeting. I know when we first started talking about this, we had plenty of time to get this in place. If it be the will of the council, we could have done that. But we've been discussing it a long time. Time has passed, and now we're in a situation where we do not have another council meeting to have a second reading. So my thinking was we would have a special meeting, have the first reading, and then have the second reading at this meeting where we could have open discussion. Now, I would like to change the format a little. I would like to, tonight, have the reading. I'd like for you to discuss it, and then in open session, so everyone is aware of what's going on. And then, council, you would call a special session to come back for the second reading and the vote. We have until, I think it is next Wednesday, before people can file for running for various offices. I would not want to run into that area where someone has filed for the position without council having made their decision on whether or not we want to have an elected city clerk or an appointed one. I know you asked Megan to do a little research for you. I think she sort of got the raw end of the deal on what was said about her recommending a 70% increase. That's not what she did at all. She checked all the various cities, all the positions, what the various pays for the people in those positions were getting, and then she came back and said we had it looked like a 11, position 11, and council said they would rather look at a 10 classification, and we've given you that. We've given you job description, and we have the ordinance. I will tell you that in every position of my staff that I've hired in, there's been near or at the bottom of the scale. So I know I was questioned on a couple things. What would be the starting salary? For a 10, it would be at $50,000. And another question I was asked, will you require more people in the city clerk's office? Absolutely not. The amount of work coming out of there now is being done by 2 people, and we don't have a problem with it. And of course, if it were to be any people added, that would be you. You establish positions, you eliminate positions. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. That's the reason that I called for the special meeting. I can do that. And of course, you can do that also, and that's what I'm asking you to do tonight, if it be the wish of the council. But tonight, we will have the first reading of the ordinance, and then we want you to fully discuss it, and then you set a date prior to next Wednesday to have the second reading of the ordinance. So Tracy, are you ready to read?
An ordinance changing the office of clerk treasurer from an elected to an appointed position and amending section 2-111, subsection C of the Code of Ordinances to establish the position of appointed city clerk treasurer and to change the title of other positions. City of Georgetown. Summary. Section 1. Amends the Georgetown Code of Ordinances to eliminate the elected office of city clerk treasurer. Section 2. States the purpose of Article 3, Division 4 as establishing the appointed office of city clerk treasurer. Section 3 establishes the full-time appointed office of city clerk treasurer and sets forth requirements for oath and appointment. Section 4 amends the qualifications for the office of city clerk treasurer to permit the city council to establish additional qualifications by order or ordinance. Section 5 amends Section 211, subsection C, to remove elected office of city clerk treasurer and add appointed office of city clerk treasurer and change the title of positions in public works and sanitation. Section 6 provides that any and all existing ordinances inconsistent with this ordinance are repealed. Section 7 provides that if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is held unconstitutional or otherwise invalid, such infirmity shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 8 provides that this ordinance shall become effective upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Introduced and publicly read for the first time, October the 28th, 2013.
Okay, Council. Floor is open for discussion. What's your pleasure?
Mayor, I'd like to open by commenting because we have had, I missed the meeting 2 meetings ago.
14th.
14th. I missed that meeting, and I went back and watched the video, and then, of course, attended the last meeting. And through recapping through the notes and watching the video and then attending the last meeting, it seemed like a time-sensitive issue. And so I obviously became a little frustrated with it that we spent, as a council, more time discussing either personal issues or personal opinions and not considering, again, in a community growing with the speed that we continue to grow at, what may or may not be best for the community as a whole at large. So it just over the course of the last couple of weeks that I sat back and recalled again why sitting on council, running for council is important for me and something that I usually get passionate about as I think we all are. And I think this topic has brought us to a level of discussion where we still we don't always consider the offices we're discussing as much as we may, from appearance-wise, discuss the personality differences or the issues. I mean, at the last meeting, it seemed like there were issues, but with your office, with you as mayor, with Tracy in the position. But I think we've gotten beyond that, and I think, from my opinion, it's most important that I consider what's best for the community as a whole. But recall the fact that we are the council, we're the body that are making that decision. We're the ones that can do that, and that we not lose sight of what's best with this on the table. I think when I went back and considered what we did during the budget time, several of us set aside differences and were able to make a real stride forward during the budget process. And if this is an opportunity to do that again, I would hope so. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, is it 240 days before the general election that is the final decision day?
Yes.
Is that right?
I think so.
So that would be really March. We really have time until March to make the final decision on that. Isn't that about 240 days out? Maybe it's February, somewhere in there. And there is an opportunity for the next city clerk, if they're elected, to be able to give them a raise, for the council to choose to do that.
Council can choose to do that in, May?
No later than May, first Monday in May
Okay.
next year.
And it would become effective in the next term. You can't change the pay during the
Right.
term.
And nothing we do now changes any of that too until the next term starts as well. So I think a lot of the controversy that's been over this has been as much about pay as anything else. So could we not have the best of both worlds of giving an increase to the next clerk and still keeping it elected for the people to be able to vote and let them still go into the booth and pull another lever for somebody elected in the city of Georgetown?
Yes.
What we've been discussing internally with that option is that, yes, we can obviously designate by the first Monday in May what we want the salary to be for the next incoming city clerk. The biggest concern there is that if we set that salary based upon what we have now, an experienced clerk, one who's getting certifications for the profession, college educated, what have you, who's doing a good job for us. If we set the salary based upon that, and then we go through the election, and she is not elected, and Joe Blow is, then we've set a high salary for someone who may not have the same qualifications and experience.
But Megan,
That's the biggest concern.
in the, I think 84-year history, this office being elected, best of my research, at least going back 40 years and even beyond that through the 84-year history, an incumbent clerk has never lost. And if we're saying, well, we want to keep Tracy as clerk, the best way probably to ensure that, of course this being a fallen world, who knows what will happen, is for her to run for re-election, because that seems to be the way clerks, we've never had an incumbent clerk lose.
Yeah.
We've had 40 years, 3 different clerks. None of them were lost.
Yep.
And, if we're relying, hope the mayor does well in the next election. I'll say that. Hope we all do. But you never know what's going to happen in elections. When a mayoral election, there's Karen, there's the mayor. They've both lost. Council, me and Marvin have lost before. Thank you. I got a minute. Well, I said me. I mean, things are always going to be, nothing you can count on. But the best thing you can count on in this case is that the clerk gets reelected.
And
I mean, if we're interested in the continuation of the office and the continuation of the work that she's done and the excellence she's provided in that office, best thing to do is for the thing just to stay open election. From experience.
so I'm glad it's not my decision. I'm very glad it's not my decision, but, just looking at it, I guess from the world I come from in HR is just, let's try to get the most qualified candidate in every position we have. So I would never want to use my position with the city to step in the way of a citizen ever getting to have their say on who they want to do a particular job. I really wouldn't. I'm just very well trained over the past 13 years of working in HR to say, I want the most qualified candidate. And it just looks in this situation that the only way to make sure you're always getting the best qualified candidate based upon the job description you write is to hire that person, to seek them out, to advertise for the qualifications you want that are listed out and determined upon by the council, and then say, we won't rest until we get someone of those high qualifications. Leaving it to the voters, I have faith that they will do a good job. I do. I join with you there. I think the voters are going to be wise and choose who's best to do the job. But if you wanted to ensure the control rests in your hands, and you're going to let the mayor go out and search for someone with the qualifications you lay out and then present that person to you for your approval, the only true way to do that is to let it be appointed. So, but again, not my decision, just wanting to give you that.
I don't know. I just don't want. I think the voters are qualified enough to figure out who's going to be the best person for the job at that time, at whatever their needs are. And I think it's a little bit presumptuous on our part to say that we can do a better job going through an application form than the voters can do in choosing somebody that they walk into the booth and make that decision. And personally, I would like to see it wait until after we get close to this 240 days, see who's going to run for the job and see if anybody is even going to run for the job. Because if nobody runs for the job, then you know what? You're right. It needs to be appointed. But if we've got people that run for the job that want the job, then maybe it doesn't need to be appointed again and let it go. And like he said, the incumbent usually wins for when it's come to the clerk's office. That's historically the way it's happened around here. So, I mean, at this point in time, Tracy, are you planning on running again?
I think that's an unfair question.
Well, I'd say
I think that's an unfair question. If we're not going to make this personal, then that's an unfair question. I don't think she needs to answer that question. I don't know. I'm not jumping in here acting like I know, but we either have to operate this. So many times people say, well, you need to operate government as a business. You need to operate government as a business. And while many times I completely agree with that, there are times that I disagree with that. In this case, there are so many offices in the city that could be elected, I guess, if we so chose. And the reason that they have gone away from that is because I think they being governments around the state, have decided that the best way for them to ensure that they have someone in place 24/7, 365 that is qualified to do that job is to make them appointed, to write a job description so that there's never a lapse in that. I never want to take the voice away from the voter. I think that's a little bit of a political, I don't know what word I want to use. I think that's a little bit misleading in this case, because in the case of the city clerk, there's never a point where the city clerk can take action that leads to legislation or increase in taxes or anything like that. There's never a case where that's the point. So I'm not sure how much of a voice that we're actually taking from the voter. I think quite the opposite. What we're doing with this is ensuring that we have a qualified individual in that office. And I'm not saying it has to be Tracy. I'm just saying that we need a qualified individual. That is a very important office. We have allowed that office to take on so much more responsibility than it used to with the ABC. And there's a lot of training I know that goes along with that. I just think that this is the right thing to do for the city of Georgetown at this particular time. if there are additional job responsibilities that we feel that office should be taking on, that's something that we can write in the job description. In the same rights, if there are things, and I battle that office from time to time about taking on too much, but if there are things that we think as a council should probably be left to City Hall upstairs, that's something that we can make the decision on. I have never looked at this as being an issue of pay grade or payroll. That being said, I wish that in the original draft of the job description that the pay scale had been in there, to be honest with you. And researching that after the fact, I guess I'll apologize to council for forcing a vote the last time. I had assumed that it was all left to the payroll ordinance or to the personnel ordinance, and it was not. So for that, I apologize.
Well, it's not something that the council asked for. In fact, pay money had never been discussed.
I agree. But
because the council would set that at the next budget.
right, but the job descriptions as written all have them in that, and I think that's important. And I think we probably should have done that from the onset.
Yeah, the job descriptions all have the grade, but they don't say precisely what will.
No, exactly, and that's kind of, you and I talked about that, and I think that's something that I wish we had probably done early on. It may have cleared up some of those perception issues that we dealt with, to be honest with you. So I fully favor this. I think it's the right thing to do for the citizens of Georgetown. I think it's the right thing to do for everyone that comes in to pay a tax bill, to be quite honest. I think it's the right thing to do for everyone who buys an ABC license and those who benefit from both.
You know, of course I disagree with you, you know that. But the county clerk, some of the things that you're talking about, the county still allows a lot of offices. I know it's a little different than municipalities and things, but still, everything that you said, then the county clerk, why do we need a county clerk? Why couldn't we make the county clerk appointed and do all those things? It still lets somebody have an opinion on who they want to go in there. They make no policies over there, just like the clerk here makes no policy. They make no policy, but the people still get a chance to make a vote on who they want to go in to pay their taxes to, who they want to go in and get their car license with, who they want to go talk to when they complain about their taxes or complain about their car license. They want a person that they want in there that they can go talk to about that. And the system, we've talked about salary more than we talked about anything else. The transition from one person to the next person, that happens every time we have an election all across the country, and our country never breaks down. We continue on when we change elections with things. So Georgetown will continue on even if there's a different clerk or the same clerk. But if we can satisfy the need that we all think there should be a little bit more of a pay raise there, we can do the pay raise, and we can still let the folks that are in this community vote for the person that's going to be in that office. And you've taken care of both problems. If we keep talking about we've thrown more responsibility on the clerk, and she's been good natured to take on that responsibility. So the standard is set there from one clerk to the next clerk to the next clerk is what the clerk does. If the next clerk comes in and doesn't take the responsibility and they're elected, well, guess what? They're not going to last, because all of us is going to talk about it all throughout town, and everybody's going to see it and know it, and their tax bills are always confused and not right. They blame the clerk for it. So they won't be there for too long.
But we'd have to have them for 4 years.
Well, we have to have mayors for 4 years that we disagree with or we don't like, and we change that up to another mayor, and those things work out when we change, and we live through it till we change to the next one. So, I mean, that's just a part of it.
When did we find out that we could raise because I was under the impression until here the other day that we could not raise the pay.
And
I got through an email or heard from somebody that we can, and I mean, we were told for
You were told that.
Yeah, that we could not do it.
No.
But we can do it.
Explain, just like we said.
Could you explain that to me, Andrew, what you found out?
Yeah, and I think
Please.
I said it a couple weeks ago that whether this office is appointed or elected does not affect the level at which you can set the salary. It only affects your flexibility as to when you can set the salary. as long as you don't exceed the constitutional maximum for an elected office, you can set the salary for the clerk at whatever level you want. You just, once you set it, you can't change it.
You're talking.
Well,
And that was communicated on a meeting on the 9th. I was here. It skipped right over me, but after watching the video, that was communicated on a meeting on the 9th.
It was.
To be fair, I guess, to those of us who support this, I think from the onset, it's important to understand that the salary was never the issue.
That's the reason, that's what I said. Money was never
Yeah, I think
discussed.
what drove the salary conversation was council.
no,
It was.
I have to take. I disagree. Okay, I had that conversation. I read it in the newspaper. I heard it from the public. I knew it was an issue. I discussed it with Ms. Miller.
It became an issue.
And with Ms. Hoffman. It was. And I don't think, I mean, obviously I pushed for it, you know, to put the grade scale in conjunction with the
I think your
position.
recommendation was a grade 10 also.
It was.
But, and it was the right thing to do.
It was.
I'm not going to deny that. It was the right thing to do. But I think the stumbling block was it not being in there to begin with.
And it, you know, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, Mayor, but it was discussed that, at least from my perspective, I thought that it should have been included from the start.
Any other comment?
Yeah, Mayor, you and I talked on the phone about a week or so ago. I asked you, I know Brad sponsored the ordinance, but it seems like this ordinance kind of came out of City Hall. And I just asked you.
It didn't come out of the mayor's office.
Didn't come out of the mayor's
No,
office? Okay.
it did not.
Okay.
Then did it come straight from Brad?
I had discussions about this ordinance with the previous city clerk on numerous occasions. I think I had talked with Tracy about it long before she was willing and in a position to actually help with that. But yeah, we had talked about this, the conversation came from someone we all know who does state training for city clerks. So yeah, this started many moons ago.
And Brad, was it not the recommendation of a prior city clerk to do this?
It absolutely was. Absolutely was.
A prior city clerk for Georgetown?
Mm-hmm.
And listening to both sides of the argument in simple terms, and I absolutely understand not wanting to take the ability to vote on something away from citizens. But when we as a council, as a legislative body, can set the parameters, meaning set the qualifications for a position in a city that's gone from 9 or 10,000 population to 30, and I'm sorry I can't quote the census projections for the next 5 to 15 years. I don't see why we wouldn't consider the possibility of ensuring that someone working within City Hall that is managing and taking in those responsibilities that we've deemed to that office, why we wouldn't consider that a better opportunity for the community. I don't know if a comparison with the county clerk is absolutely equitable or not. Certainly the staff size, the staff is different. We have 2 in our office and I don't know that there are 10 or a dozen that I know of just from my limited interaction there. So it doesn't seem like an equitable comparison, and how that is stipulated by state statute. And we're an incorporated city, and our responsibility, the council's responsibility, is to the citizens that are within the incorporated area of the city of Georgetown that continues to grow, and in having a position that's stipulated by the state, myself, there's no way around getting out of what the state requires of me as a public school educator. And we're serving the public by ensuring what qualifications our public employees are required to have. That makes sense to me, and that's why I'm on that side of the issue, if that makes sense.
Well, I still have trust in the voters. You know, I've been on, as Mark said, I've been on the winning side of what the voters have done. I've been on the losing side of what the voters were done.
Right.
But I still had trust and faith in the voters, regardless which place I was.
Sure.
And I still would like to see them have the opportunity to continue voting on this in our community.
Any other comments?
When do
I
we
will
wanna-
say that this did not come out of the mayor's office, but the mayor is in support of this. I will tell the council that. Not that it makes any difference what I feel, because it is your job to make that decision. I think it keeps a very qualified person in that position. We talk about the voters. What percent of voters do we have that make the decisions for elected offices in this city anyway, or in this county? Way down.
But that doesn't
Not
matter.
very strong at all.
It's still people's rights to vote. It doesn't matter if only 2 people go out to vote. It's still a right that this country has. Mrs. Eads said it earlier. People fight and shed their blood to give a right to vote. And if it's 2 people turn out to vote, well, so be it.
Well, we got, we're gonna have a bunch of opinions on the council, which is fine. I mean, you were put here to make these kind of decisions. They're tough decisions to make. But that's why you're here. And, moving on, any other comments?
When do we want to schedule the second?
That's up to the council.
Do we want to do it this week?
Do it next Monday.
Monday?
For
Next
first
Monday?
of next week, if that's,
Fourth,
next Monday, or?
Monday the 4th. Tuesday the 5th.
I'll be all right.
Do we have to have a vote as far as the schedule, an actual vote to schedule? Has to be majority.
That'd be the will of the council.
Has to be a
Probably
majority.
best so you don't frustrate anybody.
Not
Yeah.
all of them.
If you all, I'm trying to recall what the statute says. I actually think it says a majority of council can call a special session
does.
in writing,
Yep.
or the mayor can call it in writing. So, we don't have a resolution really prepared. We don't have anything in writing.
No.
If you all can agree,
That's the way it's
then the
we've done
mayor
that
can
in the
call it.
past when we've needed a special meeting. It's just been a consensus of the council.
I just make a motion and then
Motion we have, you want me to make a motion that we have it on the 4th? Does that seem agreeable?
Got a second?
What night we looking at, or what night are you looking
Monday.
at?
Monday.
I'm available for whatever. Monday
the
night.
4th.
Monday the 4th?
I'll second the motion.
Motion in a second.
6.
Motion is second.
6 o'clock.
6?
o'clock.
6 o'clock. How about a roll call vote on this?
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
No.
Mrs. Tackett?
No.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. McEwen?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
No.
It's 5-3.
5-3, we will have a council meeting at 6 o'clock, specially call meeting on Monday, November the 4th. Okay.
10, yes.
6 o'clock.
Only thing can be discussed is council on this meeting. That's it though, right? No
Well, if
public.
you put public comments on there, and we've done that before for special call
Yeah,
meetings.
that's true too.
I would request that the administration not put anything else for that meeting? Just maintain that second reading and nothing else?
That's it.
No other
That's
emergency?
the reason I wanted to have the
Are you
full
put-
discussion here tonight.
Are you including this, comments by citizens?
No, I was just other business agenda items, is all I was
Oh,
asking.
put comments by citizens if they
comments?
want to.
You know, I mean, that's,
With regard to city clerk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
but if we hadn't put that in there, they couldn't have no comments, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So citizens' comments and then
Regard.
read the ordinance and have the vote.
Yes, sir.
That will be it on the 4th. Okay,
Andrew,
very good.
Sorry.
Second reading of 214 budget amendment.
I'm sorry. I thought you skipped something.
An ordinance amending the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014. Sponsors council members David Lesby and Connie Tackett. Whereas the annual budget adopted by the City Council on July 2nd, 2013 and amended on August 26, 2013 needs to be amended. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky as follows. Summary. Ordinance 13-017 is amended as follows. General Fund. Alcohol regulatory fees are decreased by $380,000. Intergovernmental revenues are decreased by $2,669. General government expenditures are decreased by $1,639. City council expenditures are decreased by $924. City clerk expenditures are decreased by $22,154. Police department expenditures are decreased by $364,930. Public works expenditures are decreased by $4,771. Fire department expenditures are decreased by $19,833. Building inspection expenditures are decreased by $2,802. Dispatch telecommunications expenditures are decreased by $2,536. Transfers out are increased by $3,811.50. Environmental Services Fund. Prior year revenues are decreased by $292.50. Intergovernmental revenues are decreased by $292.50. Sanitation expenditures are decreased by $2,703. Recycling expenditures are decreased by $585. Alcohol Fund. New fund. Alcohol regulatory fees are increased by $380,000. Police department expenditures are increased by $354,404. Fire department expenditures are increased by $1,471. Building inspection expenditures are increased by $2,054. City clerk expenditures are increased by $22,071. Cemetery fund. Intergovernmental revenues are decreased by $188.50. Transfers in are decreased by $188.50. Cemetery expenditures are decreased by $377. Grants fund. Intergovernmental revenues are increased by $1,291,000. Transfers in are increased by $4,000. Recycling expenditures are increased by $20,000. Community service expenditures are increased by $200,000. Capital expenditures are increased by $1,075,000. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Publicly introduced and read for the first time October 14th, 2013. Publicly read the second time and passed October 28th, 2013.
Discussion. Motion for approval?
First reading?
Second.
Second?
Motion.
Motion.
Second reading.
Second.
Second.
Who was first then?
Brad's first.
And a roll call vote, please. Second reading.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. McEwen?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Situated here. It's all right. Okay, moving down to the next item. Approval of HUD recovery agreement and action plan for the Housing Authority of Georgetown.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself.
Yes, ma'am. Our Housing Authority at this time is in troubled situation, troubled status, as they refer to it as. And we've been going through a situation where we're trying to come out of the troubled situation, troubled status, and we have HUD's sending us information, and the city needs to sign off on it, but we have some question about that, and I'll let Andrew, we only disagree with one section of it, and that's on the very last page, the last paragraph where it refers to the city's responsibility.
Yeah, if you all want to turn in your packet to that recovery agreement, starts off with this heading, HUD and Georgetown Housing Authority Recovery Agreement. Head to page 5. That would be section 24, XXIV. I had to look it up too.
For real.
That's funny.
I don't know those Roman numerals.
Right on Romans.
So, the idea of this agreement, and I won't pretend to be an expert on this thing, but apparently the federal statute requires any troubled housing authority entity to enter into an agreement with HUD, and the city has to sign off on it, unless exempted. I had discussions with the folks at the Housing Authority, and I also talked to the folks at HUD Louisville. And I believe that that paragraph asks the city to do something that it does not possess the authority under state law to do. So I asked them, all you got to do to satisfy my concerns is add 7 simple little words in there to the extent authorized by state law. And they said, well, sorry. They basically, in my estimation, weren't willing to take that in front of HUD, Washington, that is. So I can't advise the city to sign off an agreement that asks it to do something that in my opinion is contrary to state law. So my recommendations are you either don't sign it, or you simply write those words in there in 2 places. After the word commits on the 3rd line, City of Georgetown commits, comma, to the extent authorized by state law, comma, to blah, 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 and then in the second to last line, the City of Georgetown, comma, to the extent authorized by state law, comma, will take all necessary steps to correct. And that is my recommendation.
So what is the problem?
What problem?
Well, I mean, what's the problem there in the paragraph? I mean, what are they asking us to do?
Well, it asks the city to extend oversight and take necessary steps to correct board actions or omissions and ensure compliance with the terms of this agreement. Well, state law doesn't really give any oversight authority to the city.
None.
It has some authority in the fact that it created it and that it's appointing authority.
I appoint members to the board, but other than that, I mean, that's a federal program.
And anyone, could have, ethics inquiry, or could, I suppose there could be an impeachment process. But as far as actually this city taking an active role in the housing authority's day-to-day affairs, to my knowledge,
No.
that is not authorized.
You're an ex officio member of the board. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm strictly on the board by reason of being the mayor.
But you have no
Just-
voting.
No, I'm just another member on the board. And I think we should add those words to this paragraph and take our chances with HUD. If it's not acceptable to them on the national level in Washington, they'll kick it back.
But we've made an effort anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And I just don't think we need to take on responsibility that we don't need to take on.
What about other communities that have dealt with the same issue? I mean, this is probably I don't want to say a boilerplate
This is a
type.
nationwide boilerplate agreement.
So it is. Okay.
It is.
But not every state treats housing authorities the same way that Kentucky does.
So what are other communities in the state doing? How have they dealt with this? Have we talked to the League of Cities or anybody?
No.
So is this, I mean, is this basically a state law that I guess came into effect because, you know, there were municipalities somehow abusing their relationship with the housing authority or doing something untoward toward housing authorities, and it was a law that was created later, or is this more in the?
No, it's just, you know, the city only has the authority that's given to it by statute. And housing authorities are creatures contemplated by state law. And the powers of the board and the city are set forth by state law. So, I mean, unless the city gave itself the additional powers, and I'm unaware that it did.
All we're saying is we'll take responsibility up to as much as the law authorizes us to do. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, I'm good personally with your language, but maybe I'm a little bit out of the loop as well. I mean, how bad a situation do we have, and can that even be discussed right now?
How bad a
situation with the housing
Well,
authority?
that's the lowest rating you can get, but it's on the way out.
Look, I don't, let me tell you what I learned in my very brief discussions with the folks at the Housing Authority. You'll note on here the date is September 2011. This is, to my understanding, the feds long ago came in and declared this troubled status, and the folks at the Housing Authority immediately made the necessary changes to bring them back into compliance. And the HUD is just now getting around to asking them to sign this agreement, when in fact they've basically already made the corrections that they need to make.
What were the corrections?
I don't.
You know,
Numbers.
It's huge.
financial.
I have the paperwork. It's a big, big document. I can show it to you.
Numbers. They gave us the things that were wrong, and we submitted a program of taking care of that, and it's going to be an ongoing process. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are making great strides toward that.
So they provided additional funding then to the housing authority?
No.
No?
In fact, they've cut some funding, but I think that's nationwide over what's going on in D.C.
So what would there be any expense or obligation on behalf of the city by signing this or agreeing to this?
Not that I
I
can tell. I don't see anything in there that actively that states that the city would somehow be financially responsible, and I don't think that lawfully they could require that.
Mayor, you said they're on their way out. What do you mean by they're on their way out?
We're making strides. We're abiding by these suggestions made by HUD. This needs to be corrected, and you need to do this to correct that, and this has been, as I said, an ongoing process since we had to
And then you
change.
have to report it to them once you make the corrections, right? You got
Right.
30 to 60
You
days
have to submit
do
it,
that.
right.
So things are improving?
They are improving. Yes.
I mean, Andrew, if that's
It
your...
just went through a bad time there, and it's going to take a while to get it back to where it
Well,
needs to be,
apparently
according to HUD regulations.
Right, and apparently many communities did. If
Absolutely.
So is this coming from federal, or is
This
this
is coming
coming
from
from
federal.
state?
What do you mean? It comes down from feds to HUD Louisville and,
Yes.
and to this. I mean, it's from the federal government. That's
We've been in
what it comes-
communication with Louisville. It's up to Louisville to take it on to the next level.
I think we can probably add that verbiage, but I have a feeling if it's coming from federal level, it's really not gonna make any difference.
Mike, and I don't know what they'll do with it. We tried to ask, and they would not give us any sense of what the consequences would be. But I got a feeling they'll get it, and they'll see that and go, "Oh, that's pretty reasonable. All it says is to the extent authorized by state law," and
We can't
they'll
do any more
file
than
it
that
away
anyway.
and be done with it. I think there would be bigger problems if we didn't sign it. But I think we're really stating the obvious, and that is, you've asked us to do something in this paragraph, and you may not quite understand the subtleties of Kentucky state law, and you're not willing to modify to put a simple statement in there, so we're going to put it in there for you.
so, what do? They send you a Word version of this, and you redline it?
I'll just write it right in with pen.
Yeah.
Put a little arrow
And
in
I'll
there.
sign it and get it back to the housing authority.
I think it's fair. I think you're fine.
I think it's perfect.
I just was curious about
is.
where this.
We're only going to be able to do that anyway. It's
It
just
would be
not
hard to
stated
imagine
here.
them denying it.
You know, the government.
We're not doing anything other than stating the obvious of what state law.
Yeah.
So they didn't send it to you in a Word format then?
No.
Word perfect. You said Word perfect.
We can make it.
No, they did not. I suppose I could try to find it.
But, we can't change it.
No, you're right.
So do you
So, need a
motion to do
Motion.
exactly what he said, write it in there, what the state allows you to do in both sections.
So your motion is to put to the extent authorized by law in these two different places on this last paragraph, giving me the authority to sign off on this paper,
Send it
get it
back.
back to
Yep.
Housing Authority and see what HUD does from there on in.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Tackett. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Megan, would you tell Ms. Same she can come back in? There she is. Okay. We have a request here, the next item, donation of a 1955 Suburban EMS vehicle to the city of Georgetown. I'm sorry, to Stamping Ground.
95 though. That's a typo.
95.
It is.
It's
It's a
1955.
It is actually 1995?
It's
It's
actually
95
97.
instead of 97. Yes, they got back to us today after they saw the agenda.
Bel Air.
This vehicle is valued at about $1,500. Of course, the value to us would be about $750 since this is jointly owned with the county. I know we do vehicles this way within the city. If they're surplus and another department wants it, we usually go along with it. And we did receive a letter from Mayor Schwartz asking us to allow them to take ownership of this Suburban to work with their fire department.
Mayor, I make a motion that we donate it to
Okay,
the
Mayor.
ground.
I'll second that, Mayor. And the county, for note, the county's already voted to
Yes,
allow
they've
this.
already approved their end of it. Motion and second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Item number 10, we're going to have to put off until the next meeting. Jen is sick today and did not come to work, and of course, she couldn't come to the council meeting, so we'll put that off if there's no problem with that. Engineer?
Evening, Council, Mayor. Tonight's just the first reading for a street dedication ordinance. I received a letter from Planning and Zoning Commission for Unit 1A and Unit 3A in the Lake Forest subdivision.
Ready?
An ordinance accepting new city streets in the Lake Forest subdivision, Unit 1A and Unit 3A, and including them on the official city street map. Whereas KRS 100.277 subsection 4 provides the procedure for the adoption of streets by the city, and whereas the Georgetown Scott County Planning Commission has recommended the city's acceptance of streets and right-of-ways within the following subdivisions. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Georgetown, Section 1, the following streets are hereby accepted by the city, included in the official city street map. Elkhorn Green Subdivision, Unit 7, Sections 5 and 6. Unit 1A, Cabinet 9, 399, 101207, Lake Forest Drive, Bayshore Court, Clearwater Court, Laurel Falls Drive, 20 lots. Unit 3A, Cabinet 1071, 112608, accesses above streets, 10 lots. The following is a summary of the street inventory. Name, Lake Forest Drive, 637 feet from Harmony Ridge Road to the south line of lots 11 and 12, Unit 1-A. Bayshore Court, 189 feet, all. Laurel Falls Drive, 185 feet from Lake Forest Drive to east line of lots 14 and 15. Clearwater Court, 133 feet, all. Total length of streets is approximately 1,144 feet or 0.22 miles. Section 2. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is held unconstitutional or otherwise invalid, such infirmity shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 3. All ordinances or parts of this ordinance in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. Section 4. This ordinance shall take effect after its passage and publication according to law. Publicly introduced and read for the first time October 28, 2013.
I have one question, please. Can I ask a question?
Sure you may.
And I'm trying to think, I'm trying to put on my thinking cap. But is there or is there not a Bay Shore Court in Canewood off of the Masters. Uh-huh. What is the name of that court that's right there on the right when you come in off of Canewood, off of 460, the Masters, and come through there? It's on the right-hand side.
Bay Shore Court. Bayside, there's a Bayside Court, there's a Bay Shore Court, Lake Forest, and there's a Bayside Court.
In Canewood, off of the
That
Masters?
one's actually Harbor Village.
Yeah.
But that's
no.
the only two, Bay
There's not
Shore
one
and
on-
Bayside. I see.
Okay.
There's a Bay Hill, that's what you're thinking, it's Bay Hill Court, it's Kingwood.
Okay.
You ever think of becoming a cabbie? You don't think you've done survey.
I just want to make sure.
Let me just say a plug
I'm not
for
taking a cab.
GIS. This is
I'm not taking a
wonderful.
cab.
Your street guide,
Don't
wonderful.
be scared.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
First reading.
Sorry, guys. I'll make
Ms.
sure.
Finance.
No, yeah, that's not me.
Good evening. Just here with a quarterly finance update. And the first thing I'll just make a quick note of, I'm not going to go through it, but I did include in your packet an updated quarterly finance report for the fiscal year ended June 30th. Because at the time I provided that to you in July, we didn't have all of the receivables that come in the month of July and August. So I just wanted to let you know that it was there, and we do these quarterly analysis on payroll tax, net profits, insurance premium, property tax, and alcohol, and everything came in over budget except for insurance premium tax, which was right at 98%. So we'll move on to the all funds summary for the month of September and look at a couple things there. I'll point out some highlights. Obviously, in this first quarter, we usually don't have a whole lot of revenue. We're about 25% of the way through the year. Our revenue or total resources in is currently at 16.9% overall for the general fund. A lot of that has to do with the fact that our payroll tax withholdings the whole month of July is for June collection, so that gets thrown back. A lot of our revenues come in on a quarterly basis, so anything that comes in July is always for the prior fiscal year. So anything that we get for the first quarter actually doesn't come in until October. So that's why our revenues are not quite at that 25%. Because you'll see insurance premium tax is 0. I think it's actually a negative because of a couple of refunds, but all that revenue comes in October. The next thing is expenditures. As a whole, our total resources out are at 24.6, so right on target. A couple of notes on a couple of the departments in the general fund that you may see that are over 25%. On general government, what I noticed there, I'll work with our finance specialist, our insurance, liability and property insurance was entirely coded to general government. That needs to be broken down by department. We do charge that out based on percentage of property owned. So we need to charge that out to the other departments. That brings that percentage down to about 30.5%. Of course, that's the bill you pay at the beginning of the year, and you pay that out. The other one is city clerk, is at 40.9%. That is because they pay the $50,000 bill to PVA for our assessment at the beginning of the year. So that's why that percentage looks inflated. So I just wanted to touch on those two. Just kind of going back through some of our other funds. Again, on environmental fund, garbage franchise fees come in mostly on a quarterly basis, so we don't have a lot of revenue there yet. And sanitation fees, the month of July goes back to June again, so our revenues are showing just at 8%, but that's because of the timing of when some of that revenue comes in. Expenses at 17.3, so doing okay there. Let's see, landfill fund, we just have some quarterly hosting fees that come in there. We don't spend a whole lot on landfill, so we've only spent 4% of the budget so far. Municipal aid program, we'll be getting ready, I'm sure, to some point this year to bid those projects out, but they send us 60% of the revenue up front for the year, and then they'll send the other 40% of our budgeted revenue a little bit later in the year. Yes.
On the net profit tax collections,
Yes.
the 614 in the month of July, that was that check from Toyota, is that correct?
Yes,
What
yes.
about the 488? Was that the other part of
Sorry.
it? What about the next month, the 488,000? Is
Um,
that all on that one
let me
check
get
that
to
we
that
got, or? that the other part of that check?
That
I think
was in addition to.
I don't remember anything particular that month. We have received two $600,000 estimate payments for the next year's net profits. Well, part of that came in July. The other one didn't come in, I think, until October. So I will need to look. I don't know off the top of my head exactly.
But the 48 is at 488, most of that is revenue that I guess we didn't account for, well, not that we didn't account for, but we had the big net profits check we talked about from Toyota. What was that?
1.3 million. We did budget, and that was thrown back to last year. That was for the fiscal year ended in March.
Okay, so that was for last year. So so we don't know for 488,000.
I'll have to double check that. They made another estimate, and it may have been 400, not 600. I'll need to double check on that.
Well, there's 614 in July as well.
Yeah.
I think they followed up with another check.
Yeah, they've paid two estimate payments. I just don't remember the exact amount of the second one. I know the first one was 600 because we used that to do our first budget amendment when we did that back in July.
What about our September payroll numbers? Do we have any idea on our September payroll?
Well, those will be collected throughout the month of October.
Oh.
So I haven't plugged those in yet because I haven't finished recording all of our deposits for October. So this is that's why on the net profit, or it's not profit, but the payroll
Okay,
always gets thrown
that's right.
back a month. Back to the environmental fund on page 4, as we talked about, expenditures are under what you would expect. Let's see, landfill, municipal aid, LGEA fund. We have not received or spent anything yet this year. Drug forfeiture, well, Chief stepped out, but they've obviously collected on some large cases. We've brought in quite a bit more than budgeted, and I know he's talked to you about how they plan to save that money to try to help buy some equipment and things that may be needed in the future for the new building. So, and they've spent a little bit there too. He was here to tell us what it was, but cemetery fund, resources in just a little bit less, but again, we had been doing the billings to the county for cemetery on an annual basis. We would accumulate that receivable all year long and send them one bill. We're going to start doing that quarterly. So here in October, now that we're going to get once we get our quarterly trust statements, we'll adjust the cemetery fund and start doing those billings quarterly. So you'll hopefully start seeing the county revenue throughout the year as opposed to at the end of the year. And expenditures there, 18%, so well under on target. The grant funds, we did receive the $16,000 on the recycling grant that obviously we did the budget amendment for tonight. So now that budget amendment's been approved, I'll update these numbers, but we haven't spent anything since we didn't have anything technically budgeted yet. Business park, the only revenue there is the transfer from the general fund unless we have land sales that come throughout the year. And again, about 4.5% on expenses because we pay those debt services on a monthly basis. And finally, capital projects. As you can see, this covered the budget for 2 projects, which was construction documents for the police department and UCO completion of the pavilion. So we've had a architect's bill there, and then, well, both of those are architect's fees on those projects. So the next thing is I've done the quarterly analysis on our major revenue sources. So the first one is our payroll tax collections, and you can see, once again, things that are collected through September are typically for August. So we showed 2 months comparison at this point. We're showing that we've collected 16% of the budget. At this point last year, we had collected 14% of the budget, and we're tracking about $191,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year. So that's a good thing. Looking at net profits, again, we wanted to be conservative on our budget. As you remember, we discussed. We did increase our net profits budget based on some percentage trends that Jeff from the Revenue Commission shared with me on just how everyone's net profits are going up in general thanks to the recovery of the economy. But we're not budgeting on any particular large check from one employer. As you can see, already we are at 1.1 million for what came in July and August, and we budgeted 1.7, so we're at 65% of our budget. At this time last year, we were at 7%, So of course, we're about 930,000 ahead. But to think about what's going to happen when you're thinking about this throughout the year, come next July, we're not going to get a $1.3, $1.5 million check because estimates are being made throughout the year. So keep that in mind, that on any taxes that would be owed at the end of the tax year, these estimates would come off of that. So you'll see those large numbers hit throughout the year, but we're still trying our best to keep those in reserves, although we did use the first estimate for our budget amendment. Insurance premium tax collections, again, those are coming in, and still many more to come in. They usually get here even all the way through the last day of the month, so I didn't go ahead and put those in. I think when I looked, I did check, Tracy does a spreadsheet in her office, and she does collections, and it was around 133,000. I know there will be a lot more than that to come in. They do seem to come in on the last day of the month a lot. So right now, we're not showing any revenue collected, but that will change very quickly. Property taxes, we're showing 22,000 collected, which is 2% of our budget, and we're about 12,500 ahead of where we were at this time last year. And of course, those are prior years because we'll start collecting the bulk of our property tax revenue in November. And finally, alcohol. I went ahead and put that one in because you're always interested, and I took it from the spreadsheet Tracy's done. So for July to September, we brought in 162,000 and change. So obviously, comparing that to first quarter last year, we did not have package sales during that quarter last year, so it's not a fair comparison. So any questions?
How much did we budget for the alcohol revenue?
380.
Right.
So we'll definitely. Because obviously we were doing our budget and prepared our budget back in May is when we presented the budget and had a couple quarters of collections since then. Unless you have any questions on that, I'll hang out for the next agenda item.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next agenda item then is me as well. So I believe the mayor was asked, maybe during and definitely after last week's meeting, to provide an update on possible funding for the Willow Lane project.
Yes.
And so basically, Kyle and I reviewed the stormwater budget, and he did have a project that he does not anticipate completing this year. And he can give more detail on it, but it was for Clayton, Estill, and Hamilton. There was about 42,000 in the budget for that in the stormwater fund. So we do have those funds available since this is a stormwater issue. That would be an appropriate use, and you wouldn't even really have to do a budget amendment because that account's just called storm drain system. So we could just reappropriate that and leave it in the same account. If that's
Do we need a motion on
Okay.
that? Or is it good?
If you all are good with it, like I said, it's not going to require a budget amendment because it's in the stormwater fund, and I think it's an appropriate account.
I need a motion on the Willow Lane.
Okay.
You do?
Yeah, that we'll have.
I make a motion that we take it out of the stormwater account.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, no.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Cottle? You were representing the water department for us tonight.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Associates, kind of obvious I'm not Bob. Come to you and ask you for the approval of the 3 bids that you have in front of us. Construction of the 16-inch water line extension on Champion Way from across from Mason, Royal Springs, extending westward. We're along Champion Way, coming underneath the railroad tracks and on toward the Whitaker tank. And the low bidder on that was Kay Carringer. And this is the first phase of it, 700 feet up.
I'm gonna say that's an awful long distance for 157,000, so first phase.
That's the first phase, and that's just 700 feet. That gets us under the railroad track and up next to bypass or Champion Way up by Whitaker's property.
Any question on this? Need a motion?
Motion. Oh, I'll second.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 2, Mr. Carter.
Thank you. Next one is some painting repairs at wastewater number 1. On the clarifiers, as you know, they're steel. They come weather coated. They're about 18-year-old. It needs some repairs done. First bid we received, there was only one bidder. We turned it down, rebid it. And this guy has done work for us before out at number 2. So we know what we're getting here in this $146,475.
Was that a better bid than the first bid?
By far.
Okay.
I don't know if you had time to look at it, but the first one was $695.
Wow.
Motion, Mayor.
Second.
Motion second.
Connie's gonna jump on it as long as it's down there.
Any questions?
I'll shut up on the third one.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Number 3.
This is for the Wrights Lane Pump Station out on North 25. This is, we'll tie it into the existing force main that runs parallel with 25 from Sadieville and the landfill. We'll hook onto that 10-inch line that comes there.
Question? Motion? Motion. Second?
Second.
You got it? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Carter, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
HR.
Tonight, in conjunction with Chief Bossy and Chief Bruin, I'm putting before you a municipal order to approve a promotional pre-qualification process for our police and fire department. What this involves is simply putting more detail into how we want to conduct this process and cutting out on lost productivity by keeping pre-qualified candidates on a list ready and waiting for a position to become open instead of advertising and then going through the complete interviewing, testing, and all that process when the position is open. The example, at least the example I pull from, comes from Toyota Manufacturing, where they do this for their team leaders and group leaders, so that if someone leaves a position unexpectedly, they don't have to go through a lengthy process of interviewing, posting, testing, and all that. They're just ready to grab their next person from the list and put them in a position. I have heard from both chiefs that they would like the ability to be able to have this determined on set periods of time, so that, number one, the process doesn't have to be completed over and over throughout a year's time. I've also heard from some employees that have gone through the promotional process that they would very much appreciate not having to continue to go through the same test over and over and over if they could just get pre-qualified and put on the list that's held and used. So the details of the policy I put before you in regards to which positions of rank in each department would be pre-qualified and on the time frame on which they would pre-qualify. I brought you a little bit more information on what I think can be saved by using this process. Number one, and obviously it's the hardest one to put a good dollar figure on, is time. It just allows the department to react more quickly to turnover. But Assistant Chief Ward did put some numbers together for me from the fire department. We have gone through 6 promotional processes in the last 2 years, and each time he projects that it's cost the fire department about a little more than $2,400. The police department, they don't order specific standardized testing. They create their own testing from their general orders, so therefore it doesn't cost quite as much in the police department. But they also have promoted at least 6 times in the last 2 years, and we project that it probably costs somewhere between $500 and $1,000 each time they do that. We had passed an ordinance that said anytime there are interviews to take place in the city, that a cross-functional panel would be put together. So each time we go through this process of interviewing, The department has to bring their own department head, a member of another department, and the director of HR or the designee from HR to each interview. So I think you can see it's pretty time-consuming to pull an interview process together. So we're just hoping to save that by moving to a policy such as this, if you so approve.
This is a recommendation of both chiefs.
Both chiefs, yes, it is, even with employee input as to something they'd like to see happen.
Yes, Mark.
One question, and again, I don't, by no means do I know the entire testing process, whether it be in the police department or the fire department. I think Chief Ward's already, or Assistant Chief Ward's already left. If a police officer is trying to get a promotion, and either he or she takes I'm assuming a part of that testing process is a written test.
Mm-hmm.
Does that written test, is it good indefinitely, or does it expire at a given point, and then they would have to go back and take it again somewhere down the road?
Would you like to answer? Would you like me to?
Yes, each time we establish a new list, they would have to redo the promotional process.
So the test score doesn't.
Yeah, the test score wouldn't ride over a series of 3, 4, 5 years, because our general orders change pretty regularly.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
I didn't see, I'm sorry.
The way I look at this, though, it kind of, if you're promoting from a regular fireman to a captain, you're filling that shift without being down a captain on duty, or same way with the police department. So you're not running short on your head men. My son went through the test 3 times, and over 3 years. And if they had this promotion, of course, he could have got promoted quicker, but he still made it. But it still takes a lot of time, and they were down, 3 months or something, John, when you're at least 3 months where you can promote in that position? So they're down a captain for 3 months, say.
It's a gap.
And that's
that takes
the
a while
best
to
thing.
finish.
I talked to you about this earlier. So I think it's a great thing for everybody.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion, yeah.
Do you all want me to read the?
Since my son's already in there, it doesn't
Go
affect
ahead.
him, so.
Go ahead.
An order approving a policy that will allow the pre-qualification of candidates at certain intervals for designated rank positions within the Georgetown Police and Fire Departments. Whereas the Georgetown Police Department and the Georgetown Fire Department have several positions of rank that each require specific testing that can be both time-consuming and costly, and whereas the Georgetown Police Chief, the Georgetown Fire Chief, and the Human Resources Director have developed a policy that will address a more timely and cost-effective means by which to fill positions of designated rank. Now therefore, it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that the promotional pre-qualification of Georgetown Police and Fire Policy attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated as those set forth fully herein is adopted.
I'll second Marvin's
And
motion.
there's a second from Ms. Tackett. Any discussion? Any other comments? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Megan.
Thank you. The second item I have on the agenda is requesting council's approval for the Delta Dental renewal. This is another issue where I've spoken with employees and learned that the Guardian network was not broad enough to cover a lot of the dentists that we have here locally in Georgetown. So the request was made by several to go back to Delta Dental so that the network of providers is as large as we need it to be. I know specifically the 2 pediatric dentists here in town were not part of the Guardians network, and we could not get them to become part of Guardians network. So going back to Delta Dental, I was a little bit afraid that we might run into a price increase to do so, but we actually end up saving about $100 to go back to Delta Dental. So if it so pleases the council, we've got a municipal order in front of you to allow the mayor to sign all relevant documents.
Motion.
Read.
An order approving an agreement between the City of Georgetown and Delta Dental for dental insurance benefits and authorizing the mayor to sign all relevant documents. Whereas the City of Georgetown has entered into a service agreement with Assured East Lucans Insurance Agency, Inc. as a result of a public competitive process, which was authorized by Municipal Order 12046, and whereas pursuant to the terms of the service agreement, East Lucans and the city's Human Resources Director have negotiated terms for dental insurance with Delta Dental for a 12-month period ending December 31st, 2014. Now therefore, it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that the mayor is authorized to enter into an agreement with the Delta Dental to provide dental insurance benefits in accordance with the terms of the Human Resources Director's recommendations attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference, and the mayor is authorized to sign all relevant documents.
Second that motion.
Motion
I
second.
think the first one was Kelly, wasn't it?
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Megan. I don't know, they know you're a bona fide Georgetown resident now? She has moved into Georgetown from Lexington. We're glad of that. Chief, update us.
We started seeing some more activity around our hotels and motels about 2 or 3 months ago. So we started exploring the possibility of a hotel interdiction unit program. And we currently have 11 hotels that are signed up to work with us on that. And we'll do our first training next month around the 11th. We're going to solicit one of the hotels to offer us a training room to use. But we'll train the hotel and their staff on things to notice for prostitution, drug use, that kind of thing. And then of those 11 hotels, 11 officers have stepped forward to be liaisons with the individual officer, with the individual hotel. So the hotel has a person they can call, and we can track some of that late night activity that we've been seeing here lately.
That's awesome.
I think it'll be a good program for us.
Good. Thank you.
Chief.
Council comments.
Mayor, I'd like to make one, because at the beginning of our meeting tonight, during the public comments, and I might have missed something here, and somebody please correct me if I have. There was a young lady that made comments about the city clerk getting a pay raise and a cost of living adjustment in this budget cycle, or did I misunderstand that? Or was that what was stated?
That's what she said.
Okay, but the only, can we clarify that just so that's on the record of what was actually received? Because I thought I heard two different.
Absolutely.
You did.
Yeah, each year we
Okay.
get the letter from the Department for Local Government that lets us know exactly what raise we're allowed to give our elected officials, and that was 1.7% this year. So the only raise Tracy received was the
Okay.
1.7% increase.
And then also the figure of 1,200 weekly pays is probably incorrect.
Any other?
Thought that needed to be
Comments,
clarified, just so there was no misunderstanding there.
We entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by
Second.
Mark. Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? We'll see you next Monday evening.
What a day.
Took a
No, I
picture.
didn't take a picture.
Did
My
I,
wife's just on Facebook.
did I not see you mowing yesterday?
Special meeting, you got it.
Well, you know, as I explained tonight, I wanted the discussion to be during a regular